Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Ni-Cheng.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice. Welcome to our episode on navigating uncertainty, embracing change with calm and clarity.
This month has featured unprecedented fires and will soon feature a big transition of political power in our country. And many of us are feeling unsettled, unsafe, rattled, scared, and vulnerable amidst climate change, weather catastrophes, political uncertainty. How do we move forward?
Today's episode is going to invite you to think about some ideas about moving forward in the face of uncertainty and big change.
And we hope to offer you the possibility of staying out of fear and catastrophizing and overwhelm, and potentially finding buoyancy without jumping into toxic positivity and or ignoring how you feel or isolating yourself. So as we move into this next week and years ahead, we thought this would be a great time for this conversation and choosing how we would like to move forward with clarity and calm. And I wanted to offer that last time we came to this moment in time, I made a decision to not listen to anything for 4 years that had anything to do with politics. And it actually worked out okay for me in that I stayed out of the sensationalism and the fear, which I always remember that that's the media's job because that's what gets us to watch it. And so my making a decision to stay out of that was very intentional, and it brought me peace. And it wasn't that I wanted to be ignorant. It was really that I needed space and to feel comfortable and safe and to breathe. And since then, actually, I do barely check in with political news, but I also know that my mother checks in on all the news and my husband does. So I know that I will know if something happens. But more recently, as we've headed into 2025, even with this intention to not pay attention to some of this stuff, I can't not hear about it. So these days, I feel like it's seeping into nooks and crannies of places that I do want to be. And my clients bring up challenges with it. My mom does, my husband does. And there's just the fires affect friends. And so I have to come up with a new approach as we move forward. And so I began looking for a new approach and started to think about, well, how can we show up with calm and clarity? And specifically, how can I use mindfulness to be more strategic and nimble in the face of upcoming changes? So at the risk of being a broken record, I'm going to dive back into the tenets of mindfulness, because when I started to brainstorm how I wanted to show up, it was many, many of those tenets that popped up again. And while we talk about these things in the podcast, of course, they're relevant. Even though the challenges keep changing, the tools continue to help guide us to show up as our highest and wisest selves.
So I'll share a little bit of truth about the last Trump presidency. I definitely have a lot of trauma around COVID and also that presidency because of who I am and what I look like. So I'm a woman of color. I'm also an immigrant. I'm also a mom of people that were born female as well with mixed race ethnicity. And this uncertainty is really quite scary. But it is my truth and I 100% own it. So I'm broaching it this time with bravery and setting the intention that we'll actually talk about a little bit later to face this head on bravely. And this harkens back to my mom's wisdom when I was diagnosed with cancer, another time where I faced tremendous uncertainty in my life when I was getting treatment. And she said to me, 勇敢的面对, which means bravely face it. So while it's simple, these three words have helped me get through a lot of trials and tribulations in life. And here we are again, bravely facing the unknown. So I can relate to what you did, Jesse. Kind of, I stuck my head in the sand last Trump administration, like an ostrich. Uh, and I really was intentional about avoiding and escapism. Uh, and in fact, I caught myself, and I started doing that more recently too, purposely not listening or watching speeches because I knew I would be triggered, like in a way of sympathetic drive and rage and anger and a lot of difficult and uncomfortable emotions. This was not to deny reality, but it was more of a way of honoring what I needed for my own self care and my own calm and peace within. I was very clear about knowing what my triggers were. And then I would then go back and read the transcript, or if I had the bandwidth for it, I would watch, but very rarely, I will say, watch like kind of snippets of the speeches. So I'm going to be incorporating that mindset again, where I'm very clear about my triggers. I'm very clear about what I do and do not want to do with regards to my consumption of the news. But it's going to be prioritizing my own self protection and those that I love as I'm able to, because I will not protect to the point of costing my own well being.
What I heard is know yourself and choosing the approach of conscious consumption.
Mhm.
And brave might be the adjective as we look at some of these tenets of mindfulness that we put in front of all of them. Brave acceptance, um, brave awareness, brave attention. And I wonder if that makes it a little bit more specific in the way that we approach it. So the number one key for me, given where I am right now and knowing myself, is to choose acceptance. And remembering that acceptance is not resignation and it's not condoning. This soft acceptance and real true acceptance for me is my highest and wisest energy. It allows me to honor my conflict avoidant self and the part of me that doesn't want to spend a lot of energy fighting things that are out of my control. And I always like to accept and not like, and that feels good. Here, I also want to accept and allow. And the allow part is the not emotionally bypassing and allowing whatever feelings come up as they will, allowing potentially worry or anger or fear, and recognizing that that is my humanity and all of our common humanity. And that is not unreasonable to wake up and worry or wonder. And then going back to acceptance that I can't change anyone and I can't change the world around me, and to focus on what I can change. And so while I always encourage a lot of mindfulness and yoga to help optimize our ability to stay in this calm state. It doesn't mean that you do that to the exclusion of the feelings that you have.
Yeah, because those difficult feelings, as uncomfortable as they are to feel, give you really, really important information about your boundaries, about your values, about your safety. So, thank you for pointing that out. So, I want to bring in a not new concept, but the way that it's been framed can be somewhat helpful. So, another way to think about accept and not like is to use the let them theory. And more recently, I've been binge listening to the Mel Robbins podcast, and it's been made popular by her, who also just recently wrote a book about it on the New York Times best sellers list. So basically, in moments of uncertainty, you can also voluntarily choose to quote unquote let them, which releases your desire to control things that are out of our control, like actions and thoughts of theirs. And then it also releases our control for wanting things to be different than they actually already are. So basically, things outside of our control. So, to this situation with this upcoming administration, I say, let them go through this administration. I mean, we don't have any other choice right now except to let them uh, proceed with this term and then see. This is also the disclaimer that I'm not going to sit idly by, and I'm not going to just sit and not speak out or act against injustices that are being witnessed. But in this particular moment, rather than jumping to worst case scenarios and catastrophizing about things that may or may not basically have not happened yet, ultimately, even though the may part, like, we kind of have a history already of the prior 4 years of this administration, that you can choose not to be in a place of catastrophizing. And so I'll choose, instead of catastrophizing, to be in a place of uncertainty. So kind of backing up the ratchet in terms of the spectrum of certainty, uncertainty, catastrophizing, to the middle part, which is uncertainty, as a type of fulcrum or a grounding point, knowing that it's certain that there is uncertainty. So this was also inspired by another one of Mel Robbins' podcasts, was to use the uncertainty actually as a stabilization point rather than jumping to catastrophizing, which I thought was actually really helpful for me to frame it that way. So it's also what we're facing, and anytime we're faced with anything that's uncertain, it's actually an opportunity not only to practice mindfulness, sometimes in an uncomfortable way, but it is an opportunity for sure to get comfortable with the uncertainty. And it's hard, but there's definitely growth potential there should you choose to let it be. So it's more of a, for me, my rendition of the let them theory would be let them and choose my own response amidst the uncertainty. I'm intentionally choosing uncertainty over catastrophizing. And in order to practice accepting and not liking and letting them and responding, you have to practice mindfulness. So, reminding everyone that mindfulness is paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment. And the simplified explanation for mindfulness is allowing your mind and your body to be at the same place at the same time. So, in order to do that, we have to acknowledge and feel our feelings. So, when we start noticing when anxiety, fear, catastrophizing starts bubbling up and creeping up, and I think by now, all of us have a pretty good idea of what that feels like in our body, like what that emotion physically, physiologically feels like. This is an opportunity to drop the judgment about why you're having it and to get curious. Curious about the particular situation that is causing those more challenging emotions. For instance, is this a situation where I'm actually resisting reality, wanting things to be different than they actually already are? Like, as you had mentioned already, Jesse, others' actions or thoughts that we, to the best of our ability, still cannot control, regardless of how hard we try. And so you can use the let them theory to hence care for oneself and also for those that you love and care for.
When I think paying attention on purpose, I also often choose to pay attention to the things that are working or the things that are safe or to how I am resourced or what is going well. And I offer that once again, not as toxic positivity, but paying attention on purpose. All of those things can exist simultaneously, and we can move through more difficult times when we focus on things that feel better to us.
That's a great point because in uncertain times, our negative attention bias is going to definitely be auto triggered. Like, this is how we were hardwired. So, when you practice the positive attention bias intentionally, then you're kind of counterbalancing that. There's a yin and yang balance to that onslaught of negativity that our brains were hardwired for.
Next, I am intentionally choosing an intention and remembering that our brains, without an intention, go to the negative, as you mentioned, that hardwired negativity bias. And so choosing an intention is a way of paying attention on purpose. And to me, it's an approach or an attitude that I want to bring to it. And I think choosing an intention is incredibly personal. So some people want clarity, some people want calm. I am noodling around ease, not because I think ease is going to be easy to find, but because I would love to find more ease amidst challenging times. And one of the thoughts that I have around finding ease is I often like to have a visualization as an intention. And I'm reminded repeatedly as we move forth this January to be a lighthouse and not a zodiac raft. And that zodiac raft is out there trying to solve and fix everything and make sure everybody's okay and has very scattered, distracted use of energy. And a lighthouse stands tall as a beacon of light. And so that expends less energy and is more easeful. And so sometimes it's a visualization, sometimes it's a word, but choosing something can help you land body, mind, spirit all in the same place.
So, lighthouse is rounded and really rooted solidly on land. So, not only are you this beacon of hope and a shining bright light in the darkness, but you yourself, in order to be that for others and yourself, have to be rooted in the ground like a lighthouse.
Yeah, I love lighthouses, and they have a nice view. They're just up there sort of
They're
looking over the
beautiful.
top. They're beautiful.
All right. So, we also know from research that a wandering mind is not as happy when we are in the same place at the same time, even if the present moment is somewhat unpleasant or uncomfortable. So, the invitation here is to bring yourself back to the present moment experience. All of our mindful moments have ways that you can bring yourself back to the present moment. I usually start off with a grounding practice with grounding the feet, noticing the sensations of your body with the surrounding environment. That is a really quick way to get back to this present moment experience. So, the other tip that I wanted to also share with you is another version of let them is to let go. So, another version of let them is letting go. Letting go of what? So, letting go of what's not in our control.
And focusing really on what is can bring you that groundedness and can let you enjoy what's around you. and seeing what is right there in the present moment.
Another tip is to show up with curiosity. So I had brought that earlier in the podcast about how I approached the last administration for myself. And so you can ask yourself good questions. So I'm going to give you some hopefully good questions here that I'm going to also label as the reflection questions too, because I think that they are good enough to be reflection questions. So when you find yourself in a situation about something that's happening potentially politically, something very charged, something that's making you angry, anxious, fearful, why? Why is this creating this triggering reaction within you? And why are these emotions arising? Asking also yourself, what are your thoughts about that circumstance that you're witnessing or involved with? What are your emotions? So, naming your emotions, name to tame. What are the body sensations, allowing yourself to feel, to heal about that particular challenging situation? And then, why might the particular situation, circumstance, person believe that a particular idea that's being shared is true to them, but so untrue or so unjust from your perspective? Like, getting a sense of like, where in the world or universe are they coming from? Just go there and ask yourself. Get curious, remembering not to judge too much, but I know that question might bring up a lot of judgment. And then the most important question, I think, is to how might I respond to this circumstance that I cannot control in a way that's actually kind and compassionate for myself and those that I care about?
Bring that idea of I wonder when something makes no sense at all. I love to think about, I wonder why someone thought that was a good idea. I wonder why someone sees it that way. Or you used to offer, how interesting. Both of those make me smile. And so, as a form of curiosity, can be a valuable way to get yourself out of the spin and drop into curiosity. Other tenets of mindfulness, I'm going to call them the P's for the moment, patience and presence. And as is the name of my business, pause and presence. And so patience is responding, not reacting. Pausing is choosing to take a pause, slow down, pause and breathe, pause and settle yourself, pause and ground, connect to your nervous system before you let your brain go off into the spin. And so mindfulness as a practice, a regular practice, can actually help you do this. It lengthens that pause, even if a nanosecond, to keep you out of the reactive phase. And so this season of our world might be a great time to start a mindfulness practice. If you are looking for ways to practice, we have mindful moments after almost every single episode. Please take a listen to them. Join me for yoga. The first 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, are also mindfulness practices. So if you just want to do that, you can do the recordings of that. Listen to an app, listen to Ni-Cheng's website. There are so many ways to practice mindfulness, and it doesn't have to be hard. But optimizing your nervous system so that you can respond and not react, and that you can pause, and that you can be patient, understanding that being patient when things feel very chaotic and scary is very difficult. And the other P, presence. And presence to me is the answer here. Because if we go to the past trying to understand how we got here, we get frustrated. If we worry about the future, we're in panic and anxiety and who knows what. But in this very moment, where are you? What is happening to you? What is happening to your family? It may not be ideal, but trying to stay in presence at the dinner table, on your yoga mat, maybe you're with a patient, maybe you are sitting out in nature. It can be very healing and give you space to take deep breaths and move through with more grace and calm and equanimity.
So other tenets of mindfulness that are helpful for uncertainty include kindness, being kind to yourself, also being kind to others, but not at the cost of your own well-being. Non-judgment. I've said non-judgment a couple of times already during this episode. There is also an automatic tendency to judge, very binary, in black or white, ones and twos, because that's quick and that's fast and it's efficient for our brain, and our brain loves to judge because it's protective. But in circumstances of uncertainty, the judgment may not serve. So, inviting you to see if you might drop the judgment so that you can bring in more curiosity. Um, Along those lines, a non-striving piece. So this harkens back to the point about letting go of things that you can't control. So what if instead of trying to immediately react and do something about the thing that you can't change in that particular moment, you take a moment to reflect, to get curious, to make sure that you're okay, to make sure that you're participating in intentional self-care before doing anything about it, if you even decide to do something about it. I wanted to bring in a quote because being in San Diego and having some family close to the Los Angeles area, the fires uh, have been kind of top of mind lately in the LA area. And so our hearts go out to everyone that's been affected. And we're so grateful for first responders and firefighters that have been working overtime to try to keep people safe. So this quote comes from Mr. Rogers, one of my favorite TV shows growing up as I was learning English was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And so he shares, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And so, in the times of uncertainty, whether it be fires or a new political administration, I am hopeful because I've already seen it during the first Trump administration and also during the fires. And I have no doubt during the second Trump administration that the helpers will continue to be present, to continue to come out of the woodwork to surprise us all. Just even with the fires most recently, there's been such an outpouring of support, of calls for donations, calls for collections, mobilization of troops in the way of volunteers going up to the affected areas to help with all of those donation efforts and cleanup efforts from all over the world, really. A firefighting team from Mexico also came up to help. So, not just national organizations, but international organizations, individuals, both monetary and material.
And a reminder that since most of us consider ourselves helpers and fixers, that we don't have to jump in to fix and help with everything. Noticing the helpers, noticing the shared responsibility and how many people are available to help, not just you. So if you turn your attention to looking for the helpers and then thinking you're not helping enough, just notice how many helpers there are. And the last one to bring up today is compassion and love, and dropping into that common humanity and the idea of listening to each other and pausing and being slow and taking time to do that. So, a few ideas for success as we end: taking good care of your nervous system and your physiology, practicing mindfulness, practicing yoga, getting out into nature, buoying yourself with connection and community, joining us in the Mindful Healthcare Collective, joining us in person for a retreat. All of those can be really, really helpful in being able to show up for this time as your highest, wisest self. Making sure that you are replete, i.e., not on empty, same things can help with that: community, connection, rest, maybe humor, and maybe an invitation to do an energy audit, looking at what depletes you and what energizes you, and being strategic about keeping yourself off of empty during challenging times to the best of your ability, knowing that life doesn't always allow for that. And then many of the things we offered today: a strategic, mindful mindset, asking yourself good questions, checking in with your future self, asking yourself, because I can't help myself, what would love do in the midst of all of this, can be grounding and give you clarity. And I want to issue a special invitation. Join me for lots of yoga in 2025. Join us for lots of mindful moments in 2025. Join me for a retreat. Join us for a retreat. This week, if you happen to be listening to this podcast the day it comes out, there's lots of extra yoga and extra coaching. And throughout 2025, this podcast will offer lots of tools. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes. And please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely.
Welcome to today's mindful moment. Taking a moment to pause and breathe. And taking a moment to bring mind, body, and spirit into the same spot. Taking a moment to be in the present. Closing eyes and noticing feet on the earth or sit bones on the chair. Noticing the breath come in through your nose and out through your mouth. Taking a moment to connect and notice what is going well today, what is safe and what is okay. Letting go of all the things out of your control that you're worried about, and focusing on yourself, on your physical body, where it is in this moment, in the here, in the now. If it's safe to do so, close your eyes and bring a hand to heart, bring another hand to top, and pause, pressing that heel of the hand into the heart space. Let the oxytocin circulate around and notice your energy melt. If it's available, grow your spine tall and the crown of your head to the sky, as if you were a marionette, lifting that crown of the head, raising your chin a wee bit, letting your C-spine land in comfort, giving your neck a vacation, giving yourself a vacation from the worry, allowing yourself to simply be in this moment. Pause and breathe. We'll take 5 more deep breaths here, simply enjoying in this moment. where you are, how you feel. Enjoy the breath. Enjoy the sense of touch. Enjoy space around your heart. Soften your throat. Letting go of any gripping or tightness. Letting the last breath be a little more full, a little more nourishing, and letting the release be a little more wonderful. And when you feel complete, lower hands and open eyes. Thank you all so much for practicing with me today. May we all be safe. May we all be loved. May we all accept what is, let go of what's not in our control. May we all practice patience, kindness, and compassion. And may we all spend most of our time in the present. Have a beautiful week.